Good morning, everyone, and welcome to, I think this is the 84th episode of Solid Ground. So welcome to the show where we talk a lot of things. We talk about the cultural and political, social things happening both here in New Zealand and around the world. I suppose the things which have caught my eye from a good, solid foundation, a solid ground of philosophy, theology, politics, you name it. But this is part of a conversation which you can join because Solid Ground is live. It's live every Tuesday and Thursday morning. And if you're on Family First YouTube channel or its Facebook page, your comments come directly here to me in the studio. If you're on my LinkedIn or you're on my Facebook page, you're on the Family First Instagram, welcome and thank you for your comments. I will get to those later. But as I say, if you want to come live into the studio, no, you can do so on the Family First channel. So good morning to everyone. As those who know the show, and we literally have hundreds and thousands now who watch and engage, they know I always like to say hello to people, and they often are telling me where they are and how the weather is. I mean, also feel free to share what's one good thing that's been happening to you this week. But Edmund, good morning to you. Lovely to have you along. We've got Catherine there. Good morning. Lovely to have you along as always. Jackie there and Ray Teehee. It's a bit grey here in Auckland as well. The wind is picking back up again. We've got Rosie there from Paradise, also known as Taupo, often the controversial statement of the morning, because everyone else says, no, but we're in Paradise. Got Ian there, good morning to you. Ian, lovely to have you along. Darren, good morning too. And Michael, lovely to have you there. We've got Lynette, good morning. Dean with a very inspirational message to start us out. We've got Adrian there, lovely to have you along as always. Got Susan Miller, she was on Straight Talk, another one of our live shows. That was last night. That's every Monday night. We have a panel discussion called Straight Talk. And Susan was on that last night. Lovely to have you along. We've got Food Dogs Trucking, which you can see always and still puts a smile on my face. We've got Dee Dee there pointing out what Western culture is built on, and very much correct. In fact, some of our themes might even touch on that today. Good morning to Jareen. Lovely to have you along. A colleague and wit of mine is pointing out the double entendre, the pun in the term solid ground, that of course the other side of it is, of course, whoops, I've got the cup round the wrong way, is a good cup of coffee, which I must admit I've demolished already. Ash Burton there with Murray Blue. I'm in the wrong part of the country. And grey hair day in Auckland saying Food Dogs Trucking. Yeah, it's not very nice out there at all. Guys, some nice things to start with, because of course in recent days there's been quite a lot of darkness, arguably, particularly with the Charlie Kirk shooting and the reaction to it here in New Zealand and of course around the world. But I thought some nice things to start with. The first is yesterday. Family First released the first and exclusive interview with Israel and Maria Folau. Bob, as in Bob McCoskrie, has been encouraging them to share their side of the story for many years now. As you know, they were vilified for standing up for their beliefs, in their case, Christian beliefs. You'll remember the famous or infamous, was it Instagram posts or tweets that Israel himself put out, including that he wasn't, in this case, going to support gay marriage in Australia. He stood up against his own sporting code, which for some reason decided it could speak on behalf of all players, but he got into a lot of trouble for speaking up to his beliefs, and he got cancelled, not quite to the level of Charlie Kirk cancelled, of course, but cancelled nonetheless. In fact, I've written about, not these guys in particular, but I have written about this in a recent Substack of mine, if I can find it, which I probably can't, but I've written a Substack on what I call the continuum of violence, which is really pointing out that the left, the far left, are quite happy to do everything from cancel you speaking to terminate your contracts, here we go, to, of course, like they did with Charlie Kirk, is killing you. It's a continuum of violence, and it's all interconnected, primarily from the left, not exclusively so, but as I say, one end of the continuum is simply yelling and screaming at you, cancelling you from speaking, as I've had myself. You might remember earlier this year I was meant to give a talk at a university and it was cancelled because it was deemed too controversial to talk foreign affairs. Obviously what we're saying with Israel and Maria Folau speaking there, faith was not accepted. And of course, then you see the violence against the Posey Parker woman, and then, as we say, the killing of Charlie Kirk, the murder, the assassination. So anyway, long story short, there's a Substack. But the good news is that Israel and Maria did this interview. We released it actually at the forum 2 weeks ago, which went down really well. But as of yesterday, only 24 hours ago, we released their video, which you can see. It's free. It's online. You can go to Facebook, but probably the best place to view it is on YouTube. And I'm going to give you a little teaser here. I should have got a longer piece, but I'm slow. I'm very slow. But as I speak, Bob was telling me we're just shy of 50,000 views in just over 24 hours. But here's just a sneak preview.
I got sick of living in my apartment, not being able to go outside for some fresh air because we knew paparazzi were outside. And I told him, okay, I'm done. Can you just take it down? Be rid of this whole legal situation. Let's apologise and get on with our life.
And what did your loving husband say?
Hell no. What are you, nuts? No way. And I knew,
What was your response to that?
divorce? No. We have the papers. To speed dial my lawyer? No. I knew.
As I say, just a teaser. You can go over to Family First YouTube channel now and see the whole thing and join us as just shy of 50,000 others. So I think that's quite exciting. Food Dogs Trucking is pointing out that it's a grey hair day here. And you sound like my wife, who's wondered how on earth did the man she married with brown hair gone grey? And it's all the stress, I suspect. Actually, jokes aside, it probably is. But good morning to everyone else who is opining. I can see it all flooding there. Lovely to have you along, including there Judith. Lovely to have you. Thank you. In other great and I think happy news, because look, as I say, I often am critiquing things which are happening there and pointing out the problems with them, but it's nice to point out good things. So as I said, not only Israel and Maria Folau speaking out, but I saw this only a couple of days ago. Our oldest person, Aileen Kars, I assume that's how I say it, is 112. And I don't know if let me see if I can play a little magic here and zoom in. I probably can't. Whoa, there we go. Isn't that amazing? Oh, we're going the wrong way. There we go. Let's see. Trying to fiddle. Look at that. Amazing. Absolutely amazing, really. As I say, 112. So go her is all I can say. I've blotted myself out now. Sue, who was also on the panel last night, was saying it's an exceptional interview with honesty that could only have happened because of the Falau's trusted Bob. Well, there's 2 points to make there. It really was an exceptional interview with Israel and Maria. And again, I just keep encouraging people to go and listen to it because in itself it is encouraging. And, on the serious side, it is because of Bob's qualities. He knows what he's doing, but he's highly trusted and respected. The wit in me, and Bob would appreciate this. Of course, it's nice to know that one person trusts him for an interview. No, okay, that's terrible. Jokes aside. So as I say, just happy birthday to Aileen Kars. I don't know her, but 112. What an age. And then in New Zealand still, positive to see, and I hope this has been driven actually by government, but the Ministry of Health here in New Zealand is looking for input on palliative care in New Zealand. How might it be improved? And you can see at the bottom there. Actually, it must be through Health New Zealand rather than the Ministry of Health. I know it's a funny distinction. Ministry of Health is policy, Te Whatu Ora, or Health New Zealand is sort of the operational side. So if you want to make some suggestions about how palliative care should operate here in New Zealand, there's the email. I think it's palliativecare@tewhatuora.govt.nz. So drop them a line. Share your thoughts with them because I think it's important. Susan fortunately tells me it's okay to, I can say that about Bob. I'll see if I've got a job by the end of the day. But again, exceptional interview. Look, I'm going to spend a few moments on the Charlie Kirk thing, and a bit like when I first talked about it on last Thursday, because of course the news was only breaking, I think, an hour or so before I came on live. And why I want to keep talking about it, and I'm conscious he's American. This is not happening in New Zealand, but as I mentioned earlier, New Zealand is showing some of the early signs, if not actually middling signs, of this continuum of violence. As I say, I wrote about it the other day. But I've been struck almost within seconds of this information coming out around how media changed its reporting. So long and short, it seems that this accused, and he still remains the accused killer or assassin, was living in a gay relationship with a guy, and the guy in turn thinking that he's a woman. So messed up would be the very, very simplistic way to put it. Important to note, his boyfriend is cooperating with police, which is good and important. But like I wrote a couple of weeks ago around the murders of Catholics in Minneapolis, when a trans shooter walked in, well, actually from the outside of the church and fired through the windows, killing 2 little kids. The moment anything to do with the LGBTIQ plus ever-increasing alphabet began to start in this situation, reporting changed. You've seen very limited reporting of this in New Zealand media. They've deliberately, and I use that word myself quite deliberately, they are deliberately hiding this from people or downplaying it. I've seen a few reports, but I would argue, and people might be able to argue back, that in the first hours and days, there was a lot of information pouring through. But once they began to understand what was written on the shell casings, and then once this information came out, things changed, in my opinion. And again, it's only my opinion. You guys might have a different one, and let me know in the comments, but it changed. First and foremost, they just don't report it. And secondly, now they try to downplay elements of who this killer is. In fact, they're obsessed with who he is, in terms of a Mormon, born and raised in Utah, that he's a white male. They're obsessed with who he is, not what he believes, because it's becoming quite clear. It's not totally clear yet, but it's becoming quite clear that he's embraced, very sadly, radical far-left ideas. His relationships tell you a little bit about that, and the way he's approached it. But the media are going overtime now to try and skew the narrative. In fact, Bob sent me a message before I came on live about how the New Zealand Herald's currently running an article to say that the killer is using far-right language. I'm not sure how kill fascists and so forth fits a far-right mindset. I prefer people are not far-right or far-left. But as I say, not only are media here in New Zealand and overseas, but particularly here in New Zealand, avoiding talking about some details which are inconvenient, but they're trying to misrepresent others, which I think is unfortunate, but mirrors what we saw with the shootings in Nashville a few years ago and a few weeks ago in Minneapolis, that depending on who you are as the killer and who you are targeting, the double standard in reporting will occur. And just remember, obviously in the first few days we had almost wall-to-wall coverage about Charlie Kirk within 48 hours or across 48 hours. Now it's almost dropped from media. Of course, when George Floyd was tragically killed, or he died, endless coverage. But this is no longer convenient, and so they're dropping it away, which is to be expected. The other thing I thought I would notice, amongst other things, is the reaction. It was actually something from Konstantin Kisin. I don't know if you guys follow him. He's a comedian, actually, podcaster and a thinker, if one can put things in that order, in the UK, and actually quite funny and astute. But he noted the other day about what isn't being said. So obviously there's a lot of commentary at the moment. We're doing it here together at the moment, making commentary on what happened with Charlie Kirk. But Constantine said, well, what isn't happening? What are you not seeing? And what he was saying is that, of course, after the likes of George Floyd or the ICE raids recently in the States, what obviously we saw with Posey Parker coming here and women being assaulted by trans activists, we saw violence. So, of course, had someone from the left been shot, or someone who fits within the woke ambit, we would have seen this. This is a picture from the Black Lives Matter where street block after street block were burnt to the ground. Terrible violence occurred as a result. What Constantine is noting, and I think he's completely right, is this is what we've seen by and large after the shooting of Charlie Kirk. So those who are on the right, if you want to call it that, or a conservative Christian, have simply prayed or held vigils, set up memorials. Tens of thousands have actually joined Turning Point, the organisation which Charlie founded. These are the images of response to what has happened. And as I can see people commenting in the online chat, it's quite a contrast to this, is it not? This, by and large, is how the left responds. And I know some people will say, look, speaking like this, left and right, is not helpful. And I appreciate that to a point. But we are at I think, a fairly liminal or an inflective moment in our respective societies. And I think it's why the Charlie Kirk thing is impacting people quite heavily, is we are seeing one side becoming increasingly deranged in its viewpoints and becoming increasingly violent. And as I tried to write last week, this is not simply an American thing. Here in New Zealand, people are abused, they're deplatformed, they're threatened for their political views on the left and right. We are seeing increasing violent language from the likes of the Māori Party, ethnocentric language, trying to divide people. Think about what the Greens are saying, how they're approaching the Gaza-Israel situation, the rise of anti-Semitism. It's problematic. We're not at the burning streets and shooting people yet. And I say yet because actually we're on a trajectory if we carry on the current way. And we have to turn it around. And so the encouragement, of course, is like these students in the Texas University to pray. But a bigger part, and it's why Family First exists, is to speak into the culture and to robustly speak into the culture, speaking truth without fear nor favour, and not to be afraid. Because we have a problem on the left. And these are just some examples that came from the pro-Hamas march on Saturday, where I think from what we've worked out, overestimation by the Herald in particular of the numbers, but it doesn't matter if it's 5,000, 10,000 or 40,000. Most of these people no apologies to anyone who's watching this who went there. I don't know why people would support this. These protests have very little to do with Palestine or care for Palestinians. I think most wouldn't know where to find it on a map. What it's about is fusing together radical, revolutionary, often left-wing thinking to try and destroy the West as we know it. And Israel's become a symbol of that. So this is, I think, a Green Party supporter. He's been complicit in violent acts before, but he thought this was hilarious, that Palestine exists and Charlie Kirk doesn't. I mean, two horror statements in a way in themselves, because Palestine, by the way, doesn't exist. No matter what you want to think or people want to think. And the fact that he's celebrating the murder of someone just tells you all you need to know about how sick and crazy these people are. Another one is Sam Stubbs. If you don't know his name, he's the founder of a supposedly ethical KiwiSaver firm called Simplicity. Now, he's supposedly dialed back his comments, but you can't unsee what's in a person's heart when, hours after an assassination, they write this. Sam, I doubt, knows much about Charlie Kirk at all. He's probably the classic case of someone who's picked up little snippets and has decided that because he holds a traditional view of marriage, he's happy to speak the facts around racial dynamics in the Americas and to talk pro-life issues, that he deserved to be killed. And that's what Sam here is suggesting. But the other thing that caught my eye is the absolute weakness of moral reasoning. We should mourn the violence but not the man, as if you can separate the two things. We should mourn the arson but not the buildings, as effectively is what he's saying, if you wanted to use an analogy. I mean, it shows, I'm not even sure, a J1, a year zero mindset around ethical or moral reasoning, supposedly from a KiwiSaver proprietor that is ethical. The violence is linked to the man. The violence is violence because, in this case, of the killing of a man. but he's trying to separate them. But he's getting backlash, even though he's obviously got his PR people to write an apology that's not really an apology. But I think at moments like this, and I've been wrestling with this for a little while since the Charlie Kirk situation. I don't have the answer quite yet because I am for free speech. People are allowed to say what they want to say. And I'm also keen that we don't end up with that same deplatforming or cancel culture, which the left are very much in. But intuitively to myself, there does need to be a reaction to the increasingly violent left-wing moral certainty of the left, of the likes of Sam Stubbs, radicals like this and others that we're seeing. They are becoming increasingly entitled, increasingly arrogant, and increasingly dangerous. As I say, not just killing of Charlie Kirk. Think about what they did to the women in Albert Park. Think about the cancelling of speakers here in New Zealand, the threats of violence. So how do we proportionately react? And as I say, I'm still grappling to get the balance here because I don't like cancel culture. I don't like doxing. But I think there is a point where simply smiling and just trying to intellectually engage with these guys isn't quite enough. And saying, you know what, actually, I don't want to be associated with your business. In this case, simplicity. Kiwi say to go, you know what, I do have choices, and I'm prepared to make them on the basis of some, moral basis. I don't like what you stand for. I don't like your double standards. Now, I'm pleased to say I don't have any money in simplicity. It sounds like a whole lot of other New Zealanders don't as well. Hey, a few other last thoughts. It is still coming out of this Gaza situation. Just to illustrate for you the total corruption, which is the New Zealand Herald. I don't know why any of you would bother to pay a cent for this newspaper. So a few months ago, I hope you can see this. It's two different timestamps of when they last tweeted, which was only a few days ago around the Gaza protest. And then when they last tweeted, which was months and months ago. So I used the word quite deliberately to call the Herald corrupt because they made a big song and dance months ago about leaving X or Twitter. They decided it wasn't left-wing enough for them. They were riding the woke bandwagon, that X was bad because people could share their views. And so they're off to a left-wing echo chamber called Blue Sky, which, by the way, is failing terribly. So they shut down X and Twitter with great fanfare, and at the bottom is their last post, months and months ago. But lo and behold, on the weekend, when the pro-Hamas supporters here in New Zealand, a mix of Islamists and left-wing radicals and others, decided it was a great idea to march down the street in support of Hamas with no mention whatsoever of Israel or its hostages. Remarkably, the Herald's X or Twitter jumped back into life. A series of pro-Hamas supporting rally tweets. There's an awkward sentence for you. That's all they posted. In other words, the person running the Herald's account decided they were going to bring themselves out of Twitter exile to simply and only promote. Let's use that word quite deliberately too. Promote these pro-Hamas rallies. There hasn't been any other posts since then. That's the only reason it happened. And this is supposedly of the neutral, objective fourth estate that is meant to be the New Zealand Herald and media. What a joke. What an absolute joke. But you know what? We can be grateful because moments like this illustrate to you, and I'm going to use that word again, the corruption which is right through our mainstream media, and the Herald are a good example of that. And, here's the final one. I hope you can read it. I'm sorry if you can't. It's the main things at the bottom. This is actually from the BBC, so I'm conscious it's not New Zealand. But I almost fell off my chair because in the reporting, they actually shared comment from someone in Gaza City, saying that it's actually Hamas which is stopping them leaving the city. Obviously, they're commenting too that Israel is striking targets in that city, in Gaza City. But this person talking to the BBC, explicitly saying that Hamas preachers, so again, their imams, their priests are Hamas operatives, is what he's suggesting, and telling them they are not to leave, they are not to flee the battlefield or they'll be killed. So the civilians, I have to say, there in Gaza City are in a terrible position, a rock and a hard place. but for one of the very few times have I seen somewhat balance from the BBC. Of course, here in New Zealand, we don't see any of it. Not one bit of it. All because, again, they are so biased, so prejudiced. I just can't reiterate just how symbolic this is. The Herald leaving the biggest media forum, which is X, in the world, to try and virtue signal its left-wing credentials, only restarts its account to promote a left-wing radical pro-Hamas rally. What more? What more do you need to know, guys? What more do you need to know? Anyway, I better leave it there. I'm conscious it's almost 8 o'clock. I'm going to leave you, and it's not quite my face, but there's Aileen again, 112 years old. I mean, how absolutely remarkable is that? Guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you again on Thursday morning. Of course, we always have Bob on Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays, so you've got Bob up tomorrow. We've got political playback, of course, on Thursday night. And as I say, as always, you can check out our Substacks. Bob is there. So substack.com, look up Bob's name, look up my name, and know that you can always get our content through our website. You can watch, read, and listen. Oh, and of course, we've got, how could I forget, the Family Matters podcast. Sam Sorbo, she was amazing. I mean, she pushed some pretty strong ideas out there, but if you don't recognise, you're going, hold on, who is this person? Sam is the wife of Kevin Sorbo of Hercules, and she was fantastic. And I had Dawn Hawkins on RCR the other day. There is just no shortage, guys. You probably had enough of me anyway, but if you want to hear more, please, RCR, Family First, read our comments and commentary. Anyway, have a wonderful day, guys. I will see you not next Thursday. I'll see you this coming Thursday.